Our discussion tonight is argument from personal experience. People get out there and they have an experience, something happens to them, they think they seen God or a UFO or Bigfoot or whatever, and nobody else, if there's no physical evidence, that's a personal experience. And when somebody has a personal experience, I mean, since we have no evidence of what they're talking about, we take their word for it. Not always, because if it's a personal experience, then you can't prove what's happened, and it's a difficult subject to talk about because it's so narrow that you're trying to it's like trying to put a round ball into a square box. But I mean, for me anyway, I've been studying this for many years, and I'm still digging at it myself. But I'll tell you what, we're going to put 7 minutes on the clock, and we're going to let our guest here, Alex, he's going to start us off. And Alex, what are your thoughts on argument from personal experience? And our time starts now.
Well, of course, it's not an objective measurement. Neil deGrasse Tyson has this thing of, if you get abducted by aliens, steal the ashtray, bring that to the lab, and then you have evidence. Yeah. And, of course, he delivered like a comedian, which was great. Now, it's interesting. You could say it's like... an argument from personal experience, depending on the experience, could simply be an argument from ignorance saying, whoa, I don't know how this happened. It must have been the God I happen to believe in. And, of course, Muslims and Christians and everyone does that according to the religion they believe in. But at the same time, it could be not an argument from ignorance where, for example, let's say aliens come to you, no more crop circles. They actually come to you and say, hello, I am an alien. Please, shake my hand. That's not, wouldn't really say that's an argument from ignorance. It's like, oh, well, I don't know how I got to seeing this alien, therefore it must be alien. It's like, well, no, I mean, he said hi to you. All right. And so that brings up an interesting point, which is maybe atheists like me are simply missing something. Maybe God, for some reason, has simply not appeared to us, which is interesting. But then it gets into the problem of non-belief, which is basically says, okay, if God wants everyone to be saved, why hasn't he done X, Y, and Z? And that's a whole nother can of worms. Right. But to some degree, reality kind of sort of is up to popular opinion. It's just, do we all experience the same thing? Mm-hmm. And you have to, since we're all experiencing, reality, and we all have to have evidence for whatever it is that the person is speaking about. Like you said with your alien analogy, if somebody came out and they said they were abducted by an alien, why didn't they grab the ashtray or a medical device or whatever and stick it in their pocket and bring it back with them? So, I mean, then we would have evidence. I mean, it's theoretical that there is life on other worlds, maybe even alien life. We have proof yet? No, we just don't have it yet. But I mean, these abduction alien stories, I find a little hokey myself, and I've been studying those for years. Yeah. And it's interesting that people will dismiss alien abduction stories, but they won't dismiss stories in the Bible that are, quite frankly, on par with alien abduction experiences. God came to me in the form of a burning bush. It's like, okay, why do you accept that and not the aliens? And, of course, the answer is most likely you were raised in a particular religion. Right, exactly. And yeah, that's a great example that, the burning bush or other miracles, those ones are just skeptical. Yeah, their skepticism is shut down when it comes to the Bible. Their skepticism is shut down. So, Joe, you had something you want to add on this?
I hear this argument a lot on Twitter. People tell me they know God is real because they heard God speak to them, they saw God, they feel God in their hearts. But all these experiences are called private evidence, and they're not independently verifiable, and so they aren't proof. Further, a person from religion A claims their God speaks to them, or they saw their God in a dream, while the person from religions B, C, and D claim the same things about their own gods and their own religions. And so there's a cultural bias when it comes to private evidence for God. People typically hear the voice and dream about their religions that they were raised in, so it's very subjective. Just before we started the show, I was going through YouTube watching some of Venaloid's videos, and I happened upon Oh My God, It's Chris's video called STFU. It's a very short video that focuses on this very topic, so I watched it. And she said, people who say, like, oh, I know God is real because he intervened at the last second to save me from some peril. Like, the car accident was happening, and I survived, and I lived, so therefore my God is real. Well, that's very arrogant of you to assume, considering how many people didn't survive car accidents that day, and how many people die in other accidents or from starvation or from disease and all that stuff. So you're just, saying like, oh, well, this here is proof that God is real because he saved me. But that's selfish.
Yes.
What about these other people?
Yeah,
and I thought that was a really good point that you made.
Yeah, that's a great point there. That it always comes down to themselves. Because I had this conversation with my daughter that everybody is selfish. Everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's selfish to a point. And that's a clear indication right there that that they think that their God cared just about them that day. Nobody else. Everybody else. The children dying in the accident or starving to death or whatever. But nobody else died, or everybody else died, but you just happened to be saved. I mean, if God is supposed to be everywhere, and he's supposed to be able to do whatever he can, then he's obvious. Then that would be intervening, and putting himself in front of free will there, because then he can't. Then the whole free will argument is completely gone. Let's get Crystal's thoughts on this. Crystal, what is your thoughts on argument from personal experience?
Well, this is kind of a new way to phrase it. I wasn't really familiar with this until I got into studying these past couple of hours and checking this out. It's really interesting, I think, more so from the medical side of it. I think you've got to realize that, like, schizophrenia, it's another thing. It affects the frontal lobe and the temporal lobes. What does that control? That controls your motor functions, your decision-making, and your reality basis. So I think that people that are mentally ill. I've taken care of many Jesuses in the hospital, trust me. There's a lot of people that have delusions, and usually a lot of times they are in a religious base. So obviously you've got that. Sigmund Freud was one of the big proponents of this. He considered God to be simply a psychological illusion, something that we create in our mind to what am I trying to say?
Comfort, explain.
Exactly, and to make sense out of life. So I think there's two sides of this, and I do wrestle with this a whole bunch, just like you and Joe and Alex have all spoken about. What makes me any better because I survived the wreck versus a child that's starving, and I do wrestle with that. That would be lying to say that I don't. The one thing that I can say on this is I just think it's subjective. It's just like pain. There is no way that you're going to ever be able to say that they did or they didn't see the UFO, see God, see whatever. It's so subjective, and who am I to say they didn't?
Well, I think evidence is the great divider right there. If they say that they did or didn't, then it goes back to evidence. And by the way, that's our time. I don't know if anybody actually heard the buzzer this time. But no, that's an interesting point there, Crystal. Did you have any last thoughts on this, Alex?
Not really. I think the thing you just said is, yeah, we do have evidence. We can, for example, MRI someone's brain and say, are they actually in pain? But if you're just talking to them, it does become an interesting thought, which is, am I the only conscious person here? Are they really in pain?
Yeah. Well, someone could say that they're in pain, but not be in pain. Those are the scammers, of course. They're looking for people.
Why we have actors,
right? Or drug or people who are or have a heroin addict, for example, and they just they get they go to the hospital to say they're in pain, so they can get a high and get medical treatment, so they can get drugs. So that's another example. Joe, any last thoughts on that?
Is that how you get your drugs, Packard?
Yes. Yeah, no,
because I have to make my own. It sucks.
I know your last batch was really weak. Just kidding.
Hey, man.
Just kidding, man.
Word on the street, it was rough.